when they caught me doing it, I did it for a long time. But when I got caught doing it, that's when my team lost trust in me. And when I realized they had lost trust in me, I didn't think it worked that way. It was all about me, whether I trusted them. And that's the only way I looked at it as a business owner. But when you lose their trust in you, man, I went from working 70, 80 hours a week to 100. And it just about killed my marriage. It just about killed my business. I mean, I was up a creek without a paddle.
Visionary leader Jim Robinson here, and we got Alan Bennett with us today. He's going to drop some value bombs on building, scaling, and exit strategies. We're going to talk about some cool stuff today. And if you're building a business that you want to think about next level, today's the day. You're going to hear some cool stuff. Let's talk about this stuff. TrustBuilt Blueprint. That's what I have on my list here. Title, TrustBuilt Blueprint, increasing value, building teams that stay engaged. Alan, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. Tell us a little bit about Alan. Who's Alan?
Yeah, I guess the quick answer is I was a business owner for 20 years. I exited 2 businesses. Both of them I should have exited better. And I look back when I sold the last one, I duck hunted every day in January. I turkey hunted every day in April. And my wife was like, I don't know what you think you're doing, but retirement is not where we are right now. And what I decided to do is I reflected back on those exits. The first one I totally messed up. I closed a business that was actually sellable. I didn't realize that till after the fact. And then I sold a business the wrong way. What that looks like, selling it the wrong way, seller financing right before COVID. And the business, I sold it to my right-hand person. We had contracts. So I was in the food business and we had a catering business. And we were catering to 7 schools and 2 summer camps, all contracts, all multi-year contracts. And they were all in their infancy. So we had the shortest contract, I think, was 3 years. The longest one was 5 years. When I decided to exit, which was the only smart thing I did, was to exit when the contracts were new and not at the very end. That was the only thing I did right. When I exited, everything was solid. He was already running things, and we worked on a seller finance, a price that I could live with and he could live with. We just, all we needed was an attorney and a CPA, and we had a deal. That was in December of 19. And of course, everybody knows what happened in March and April. Everything shut down. So there was a clause in those contracts where COVID fit perfect, meaning they were all null and void. So he made 4 payments, and that was it. I could have sued him, but he didn't have anything. His whole thing was he bought that business. He leveraged everything to get into that business. So I look, as I was hunting, I look back on what should I have known? How could I have done this better to secure my exit to where I actually could, live a different lifestyle? And that's when somebody said, well, do you not have a business coach? And I was like, well, what's a business coach? Well, I knew what a consultant was, but I didn't know what a business coach was.
Yeah.
So I spent the next few years trying to figure out what I need to know in order to help the person that I used to be. And that's how I got into business coaching, and then specifically into exit planning and understand what does business value look like? Because we're all exiting, whether it's vertically or horizontally, we're all getting out. And what do I need to know? What should I have known? And how can I help the next guy out?
We got some bullet point questions we want to dig deeper in today about team and what that looks like, getting that team ready for maybe that exit strategy. And what is exit strategy? What does exit really mean? I know the ESOPs they have, and they have some other options. And what does all that look like? How does that fit in? So let's go down the list here. Let's try to give our listeners some really good content today. Why trust is a foundational driver of long-term business value? Why is the trust foundational?
What I found through my 20 years of owning my own business, I had a business that early on, I had a business that was owner dependent. And that's jargon in the exit planning world for a business that struggles to survive without the business owner being intimately involved. And I used to come back from what I called vacation punishment. I'd take a week or so off, depending on what we were doing, and I'd come back and it had gone to hell. And it was vacation punishment. And the price that you pay for running a business like that, to me, it's not about how much money you make. You can make a lot of money running a business like that, but you're sacrificing something. It's usually your personal life. If you've got a wife and kids or a husband and kids, that's usually the first thing that gets sacrificed. Then it's your hobbies next, or vice versa. God forbid it's vice versa. But so the thing, I tell you that story to say the one thing that I found that helped fix the owner dependency to get the other people to build up was trust. And I guess the biggest part of building trust is not that whether you trust your team, it's also, does the team trust you? I had a meat market, and one of the businesses I had was a meat market. And there were times that when I had a new meat cutter that I would get there an hour early, or sometimes I'd get up in the middle of the night because I didn't think that they had cut the steaks the right way. And they saw on the security camera that I was coming in after hours checking all their work. And I thought I was just taking care of my business and looking after things to make sure it's done right. And I lost their trust in me. They're like, well, he's not, why are we even doing this? Because he doesn't even trust us. Now, they didn't use those words, but that's basically what they were saying. So there's a two-way street with it. And if one thing for me not to trust them, but when they stop trusting the leader, that's when turnover hits, and they're like, well, I might as well just do a half-assed job on it because Alan's going to come back and fix it anyway. Now, those aren't what they said, but that is pretty much the situation I found myself in. In order to get out of that trap, I had to figure out a way to earn their trust before I could expect it's got to be both ways. So it's kind of like love.
So that trust is really, it's a value assessment that they don't have to tell you they don't trust you, but you watch their behaviors and you see it and you just know.
Yeah.
Or the opposite. You know that they trust you 100%. They'd give you their firstborn. They'd trust you with their bank account. That's truly building and developing a trust. That's a behavior-driven thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
The thing about trust, when it comes to business value, is it all leads up to owner dependency. Because if you've got an environment where there's very little trust, or if there's just trust maybe in a few areas, there's some lack of trust that's going on there, that translates in the due diligence process. When somebody's coming in to buy your business, they're going to find that out. Now, the accountants aren't going to find that out. All they're going to look at is the hard numbers. They're looking at tangible things. This is the intangible. In building trust and losing trust, when the owner or the seller is looking and the buyer are having this conversation, if the buyer, and you have to assume the buyer is educated on buying a business. A lot of times they aren't. But if they are, they get in there and start finding out that there's skeletons in the closet. They're harder to hide if you have low trust culture in your workplace. And they're either going to devalue, they're going to lower that offer, or they're going to walk away. Most of the time, they're going to walk away.
Yeah, you get scared.
Yep.
How about motivated employees? How can they end up reshaping the direction of a service company? And motivated employees, I remember years ago, I let somebody go. She was highly motivated, but she was changing the direction of what the company was intended to do. And she hated me, literally hated me. And she was my negative Nancy for 4 or 5 months. And she ultimately came back and said, Jim, I'm sorry I hated you for 4 or 5 months, but you were the best thing that really happened. And here's what I got going on. And to this day, we're still very much connected, very much friends. And she's grateful for that experience. But our listeners are hearing this and they got all these motivated people. But how are they changing the direction of a service company? And what does that mean? Do we want that? Do we want to guide that? What does that look like?
Yeah. So motivators, think of it like a seesaw, right? So there's ways that we're motivated, but there's opposite end to every seesaw. And there's basically 6 motivators that a business will operate around. And let's take knowledge, like your motivation to learn, right? That's part of building teams up. And on the motivator of knowledge, you have 2 opposites. You've got intellectual learners and you've got instinctive learners. Intellectual learners are the ones that are just generally curious. They love to learn and they like to go to conferences or they like to take online courses or, they have this thirst for learning. And then you've got the instinctive. And those people are like, why do I need to know this? And how does this matter with the work that I do? Both are very powerful in your organization. And then there's those that kind of lie in the middle somewhere. So understanding what the motivators are and how they're motivated is key into not only building trust, but actually getting things done. And when let's just say you had an employee that was highly motivated and they wanted to learn, and you didn't have a way to help them learn. You didn't have resources available for them to self-educate or to reach out for more knowledge. They're actually going to become less motivated and less engaged. So finding out what motivates them in each of the spectrums of motivation. So digging into what that motivator looks like and in their world and giving them that and having a conversation. The only way you find that out is have a conversation with them about it. It can be simple as, what's your favorite thing that you like to do here? What's your least favorite thing you like to do here and why? And that gives you insight as to where they're motivated. So motivation, so there's behaviors, how we act. And then there's motivators, why we act. And understanding what it is that moves them to action and having a clear understanding of what that is and making sure that that environment exists for them to thrive in. That's when you get the motivated employees.
Yeah, and those motivated employees ain't sticking around if you don't have any guidance and direction.
Well, they will stick around as long as you understand where those motivators lie. You're giving them something that's not money. That's the thing. Because if you've got an employee that wants to leave for $2 an hour or $1 an hour, whatever it is that they leave for, the reason they leave, as that old cliche goes, is they leave bad bosses. They don't leave bad jobs.
Yeah.
And that's where you can keep people. Now, chances are they're not going to stick around forever, no. But the thing is, you want to give them something non-monetary that gives them something else they get out of the business besides money. And that's where understanding and connecting on motivators and giving them what it is that they need. Is it resources? Maybe it's connection. I don't depend on the environment. There's something that they searched for, identifying it, making sure that you can give it to them in a way that they need it.
That aligns with them, yeah. Aligns with their value system. Yeah, that's crazy. I've had employees come in and they just give you a number. I had one last week said, tell me how I'm going to make $110,000. That's the number, by the way. How am I going to make $110,000 by April? And this is a $75,000 a year income position. It's kind of entry level-ish. And that flabbergasted me. So I was really, really interested in hearing, how did we get to that number? And so the motivation behind that, of course, is she's got debt. She's got all these personal things. Forget what the position was building on. She was trying to figure out how to pay her own household. So how does she get motivated? How do you get motivated through that? How do you deal with an employee at that level with those types of challenges? How would you address something like that?
If it was me, the business owner, or me,
as a business owner,
knowing what I know now, of course, I don't know what I would have done back then. I'd have just said, good luck. This is all that what we've got. Sorry, this isn't working out for you. Maybe you need to find something else because I can't get there. You're not providing the results. This job requires this, and this is the financial reward for doing those things.
Yeah.
There's structure. Now, what I would do, today, the way I would answer that, separately was maybe we need to take a hard look at our hiring process and our onboarding process, because there was a disconnect somewhere that for some reason she got it in her head that that might be a possibility.
Yeah.
And clarity of the responsibilities, clarity of what the potential income is, clarity of all the results that you can get if you check all the boxes for me. That around, it's all in the hiring and onboarding process is where you get ahead of that. Once you have it, that's it's a whole different conversation.
Getting aligned with clarity, man. Clarity is going to be the juice. Don't let them run amok. Add clarity. That's the key. Yeah, wow. How leaders identify self-motivated. This is, our listeners got to hear this stuff, man. Self-motivated candidates. So you're going through the process, you're interviewing these people, and you're like, I think they got it. And then they come in, and then they're just like a bump on a log. How do you go through the process of finding those self-motivated? What's the criteria? How do you do that?
The lowest barrier to getting that kind of insight is through talent assessments. Now, those don't come cheap, and you have to know how to interpret the results. So that's not me making any kind of bold statement other than there's science to help understand what a person does. Like I said earlier, there's how we operate and there's why we do it, why we operate that way. And there's assessments out there that you can do. DISC does behavioral assessment. Colby does cognitive. So it depends on the type of job you've got on which type of assessment would be a good fit. But the ones that just without doing those assessments, there's people that are task oriented, there's people that are people oriented, and there's some that are in the messy middle right there. Those that are self-motivated, the ones that come out sounding like, oh, this guy's going to, or girl, they're going to get something done here. Those are usually, they're people oriented, but they're very task driven. They like to accomplish. They love to see results. And when you interview them, they talk about the results. They talk about, I did this and that. And it's not in a bragging way. It may be, but it's not necessarily in a bragging because they just love talking about the results that they were a part of achieving, right?
Yeah.
And so without doing assessment, most business owners will get somebody like that. Man, I got a winner, man. This guy's ready to come out hot. And they do. And then it fizzles. It's like a bottle rocket. Pow. And they're done. And that's where the motivators come back into play, is understanding what we need. But there's something that we need to give this person to keep them on the uprise, right? To keep them from dropping.
So we're looking for that motivated conversation, almost ego-driven, borderline of maybe ego and arrogance even in some cases, because they got to tell you, but they got to do that in a smooth way and not the arrogant side of that, to toot their own horn, so to speak, but to give you some accolades and to give you some accreditation so we can see how motivated they really are. Have they been achieving? Have they been serving at a different level? That's something I would think that we got to look at.
Yeah.
Onboarding steps. That's funny. You talk to Dave Ramsey, he sends you through the mill. He makes you go through about 47 interviews, maybe even a dinner or lunch with your spouse. And then he decides whether you're qualified to work for him or not. Granted, we're not all in the spotlight like he may be, but he puts you through the ringer. And so we say we do application to offer in 8. So we really accelerate our process, and we say we're going to tell you yes or no in 8 hours, and then we'll go to the next steps. But we're doing that in 8 hours, so we're really trying to motivate. Onboarding steps, new hires, build confidence quickly. How do you align? This has been something that we've talked about internally forever, is how do you align quickly so they start to feel your culture, your values, your systems right out of the gate, day one, and then you kind of figure out, do they align well? How do you do that?
Well, I can say there's some key things to know here about what alignment is. So there's the human capital part, right? Your people. There's leadership. There's your structure and activities. So there's different ways that you look at alignment. So alignment isn't Like it's saying to have an organization that's aligned is like saying I drive a vehicle, right? So it's very broad, and it's like, well, what is it that you're driving, and what is it you need? Well, if it's identified that we all need pickup trucks because we're always carrying things, then and especially if they don't understand that they don't like pickup trucks, but you weren't clear on that we're going to be driving pickup trucks. They're like, I've never driven a pickup truck. All I've driven is a Fiat, right? You've got a big disconnect. So we're going to go back to clarity and on understanding what that, and this is the soft part that a lot of people don't like to look at, is that mission, vision, and values. Especially in a world where we operate with our hands, we just get shit done, right? It's make it happen and do it. And we discount mission, vision, and values. The problem that you get into when you discount that, it's even harder to get alignment, because people, in order to stay engaged, in order to get people engaged, you have to have purpose and accountability. Accountability is an easy one for people to understand, because like we're holding them to what it is that we need, the results that we need. Purpose is, why does my work matter? And helping new hires or new employees understand what that looks like in their world. Why does their specific job matter? And how does it impact the metrics that you're following? In metrics, whatever it is in your world, as long as people know that they want to feel appreciated. They want to feel seen, heard, and appreciated. And the way you can do that without directly saying that to them is helping them understand purpose, why their work matters, and how it makes an influence on the results that we're trying to get. And that one key piece, especially on people that work with their hands in the service industry, that gets discounted, is clarifying what does purpose look like in that world of that business.
Yeah, wow. Knowing the purpose. I know everybody kind of walks around thinking they know, and then they go to a company, and then their purpose becomes paychecks on Fridays.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not really purpose driven. Why do they get off the pillow every day? That's a very different process.
Yeah, there's one thing I'll add on that is whenever I'm working with a new client, I was like, what's the purpose of your business? Or why are you doing this business or something? I'll word it a certain way, but I'm trying to get to that purpose answer to see what the leader gives me as an answer. And whenever I hear to make money, right? I mean, what else would I be doing this for, right? I'm like, no, besides money. I mean, why this? You can make money doing something else. Why this? Well, I can make the most doing this. When I get answers like that, I can tell you what happens. I said, can I see your 941? And they're like, why do you need to see the 941? I said, I want to see what your turnover is. I guarantee you it's high. And what's your unemployment insurance look like? I bet you're at the end of your spectrum on unemployment insurance. Well, how'd you know that? I'm like, because you don't have a purpose. It's all money, right? You got to have, whether it is money, you need your team to understand that there's something beyond money going on here. And once they get that, you're going to get them to stick around.
It's crazy. I mean, to that point, if you define purpose and you truly serve the level of the purpose, money will show up and you don't even have to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
It starts showing up. A friend of mine in San Diego once said, he says, isn't it crazy? Once you figure things out, it starts chasing you. The money will chase you versus you chasing the money. And I'm like, wow. For me, it was in the early 92 probably. And I had to figure that out. And I'm like, wow, yeah. Because I went into business thinking, this is great. I'm just be this millionaire and so cool being a business owner. And then you're turned into an idiot and then you own the idiot part. And you're like, holy mackerel, I don't even know. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. And then, the people that say you have this overnight success, I said, yeah, that's about 25 years to get the overnight success. It takes a while, and you got to figure out the idiot part before you become something else. And that something else is usually figuring out how to serve people better. And I always draw an upside down pie share or a pizza shape, and I always put me at the bottom. I'm the littlest piece of the puzzle, but I got to hold everything up. And the team's at the top. and the client is second, and that confuses people right out of the gate because they get confused. Why would I consider client second? I said, because if I take care of my team, they're going to take care of my client. And then me on the bottom, I'm going to be that guy that gets taken care of, but I'm last. And I had to figure that part out. So most business owners, I don't know too many that are exempt from this, but we're idiots first before we get smart. And then we get smart because we get a thorn under our nail, and then you ain't got a choice but to figure it out. That hurt. I got to change.
Yeah. There's a lot of
stuff, man. I've been fortunate enough to have some employees that tenured with me now 35 years. And I don't take that for granted ever. It's literally, I spend time with them on the phone. I call them just to tell them how great they are, tell them I appreciate them because they matter. And what they do, the work they do matters. It's impacting lives, and we do that very intentionally. And that's important for these teams to build that. That'll develop that confidence quickly.
What
we
you
have on
said,
the list. Go ahead.
I was going to say what
Go
you
ahead.
said right there when I go to a team that has, let's just say dysfunction, like they're looking for improvement, which is why I get hired. The one thing that I walk away with, I'm sorry, before you even hire me, I'm going to give you 2 projects and they're free of charge and they won't cost you anything as a business owner. And that is showing care and recognition in a way they like to be recognized. And care is just what you just described. It can be, hey, I was just thinking about you. I hope things are going well. Or, if you happen to know something about their family life, how's your mom and them kind of conversation, that shows care. Recognition is sometimes they like the name in the lights, and sometimes they just want a little fist bump. And care and recognition is no cost, and it makes a big impact on engagement.
We did a talk this last week, and it kind of confused people when I first opened. I said, customer service is free, and you got to give it away for free. They're like, what? They got confused by that. And I'm like, hold on. Customer service 100% should be free, and I'm your customer and you're mine. And if we treat everybody that way, wow, what a different world. Your services cost money, but customer service is free. The thing you fix costs money, and you should charge and be rewarded for that. But customer service, the way we treat people, should be given away freely, no strings attached. Doesn't matter. 8 value drivers. Why that matters to every business. So I got my journal out here, and I've been taking some notes. That's why I keep looking down. So I'm writing some little value bombs that I'm going to capitalize on, but I got to get the juice on this.
Yeah.
8 key value drivers. Let's go.
Right. There's 8, and I'm going to start with the top 3. Hopefully we'll get through all 8 of them, but the top 3 is financial results. And as an exit planner, there's 3 questions I'm looking for an answer when somebody says, hey, I want to, somebody told me my business is only worth, $5 million. We're $10 million. I need to know how to get there. And I ask 3 questions are your results desirable? Meaning, are you making the kind of money based on your industry? Are you making the kind of money that's at least average or above average for your industry? So 1 is, are your results desirable? The second question is, are your results repeatable? So if I bought your business, can I expect to make the same amount of money that you're making right now or more? They're probably going to need to make more. So they need to make at least the same money that you're making right now when they buy it. So that's number 2. And number 3 is, are the results repeatable? Meaning, if people were to leave because the leader left, there's a new chief in town, and there are some of the key people decide, well, if he's gone, I'm gone. Kind of, if you have that, then it's going to be hard to have it repeatable. So is it attractive, right? Are your results attractive? Yeah. Are they desirable? Are they repeatable? And are they teachable? Those 3 things. And if they can't answer that, if they just say, yeah, you gotta have more of an answer than just, yeah. You have to describe, why are they why is it repeatable? Why is it, answer me why these things are. So that's the
Yeah.
first. So financial results is a key driver. And it's not just, are you making money? Is, are you making the kind of money that somebody else in your industry? Are you at least average or better for your industry? And your industry is all done by your NAICS code, the business code on your tax return. Everybody's done. So it's based on that. And there's assessments and benchmark reports that you can do that will indicate that. And any educated buyer is going to ask for that. All right. So you got to be industry average or better for it to be attractive. The second thing, and this one's usually pretty difficult, is growth potential. So that's the repeatable part. And can it grow from there? So to give the answer, to dig into that one a little bit, growth potential is, can you expand, right? Can you expand geographically, or can you expand product-wise? What does expansion look like? And is your business set up to do that? Not that you can do it without lending, because a lot of times you do need lending in order to expand, but it's the plan, it's the blueprint for expanding. Do you have strategy, and do you have how it would be executed? So if you were to keep this business, how would you grow, right? Improving that with a roadmap of sorts, right? Whatever that may look like. So growth potential is number 2. Number 3, we talked about earlier, is owner dependency. Can you take vacation for 2 months, come back, and the business has actually grown? Can they keep operating and operating well, effectively, without you being involved in it? Those are the big 3. So there's 5 others that go into all of this, but those are the 3. Cash flow is one. How long is it before you get paid? The businesses that think about a restaurant. You go in, you eat a meal, you pay at the end before you even leave. So those would be so there's some that you pay services up front. There's some you pay at the time of service, and then there's some that you invoice for and hope that you get paid in 15 days or 30 days, or God forbid it's 90 days if you're dealing with some other kind of entity. So the cash flow and how fast you get paid matter. The faster you get paid, the more value that drives into the business, and it's attractive. And there's a number it'll show when you go to in your multiple. All right. There is suppliers. So in the world that I live in, we talk about the Switzerland structure, is how independent you are. Can you get your products and services from multiple vendors? That matters. Do you have key employees that you cannot live without? That's going to hurt. So you don't want to depend on any key employees. You don't want to depend on any key suppliers. So how independent you can operate is a business value driver or a value killer, right? And in the due diligence process, the buyer should dig into that and find out, well, I can only get this from one supplier in China, right? With tariffs and everything else going on, it's going to kill the value, probably kill the deal. Let's see, there is the least favorite that I have is on recurring revenue. In some businesses, it's all about recurring revenue, and in the service business, usually not. So that's why personally, it's my least favorite. So think about a cell phone, right? You're going to have a cell phone and you're going to have a plan of some sort. So contracts like cell phone service, any kind of ongoing contract of an item that you're going to use, it's just a matter who you get it from. They're a little bit stickier, right? Not everybody changes accountants. And if they do, they don't change them very often. So accounting firms usually have a higher stickiness, or they have more value because it's harder to switch. Cell phones are harder to switch. Banks are harder to switch. It's just depending on what you've got going on. So the harder or easier it is to switch, that can increase or decrease your value. Let's see, what have I done? 4 or 5? I wasn't counting. Yeah, there's
no key players that are not systematized.
Yeah,
I made a lot of notes here, but that really stood out because even myself, I have a couple of key players, key roles, if you will. that if they exited today or got hit by the proverbial bus or got the Fauci pandemic reoccurred, if they got stuck with the Fauci pandemic, what would I do? That's a vulnerable place to be in a business, certainly the size we are. We're in 15 states. And that's getting bigger every day, literally by the minute almost, it seems like. And so having key players, those roles have got to be systematized to where if they go out, nothing fails. You have to keep going. And I think if our listeners hearing that, they got to systemize things and have scalability and process and systems. We do internally. We say managers create process systems and execute based on process and systems. Leaders influence and impact. And we define that very differently internally. So some of these things, the value results, man, you've got to make sure you're crystal clear in your numbers. Your numbers have got to be desirable. And how do you grow it? That was what we just talked about. That's awesome, because without having that clarity, you're not ready to exit. You might be ready to just quit and go duck hunting and turkey hunting and give it all up, but you ain't ready to sell. You're truly not ready to exit. So get clear in what those financials are, and then can it be repeated without you being present? That's another key. And be intentional with that, of course.
Yeah. Now, the other one, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Monopoly control is, and now that we're talking about the service industry, when it comes to monopoly control, what that is how unique you are, right? And not you personally, how unique is your business and what sets you apart. And in the service business, let's just say a roofer. All right. I'm just using roofing as an example. From a consumer standpoint, a roof is a roof. It's just what shingles am I using, or what, there's some details that I could probably get those shingles from one or two other people. What makes a roofer more valuable, just using them as an example, is there's some other way they need to separate themselves from their competition. And if they can't separate themselves necessarily from the competition from a product standpoint, or even a labor, like they have a better team or whatever it is, they may have a marketing plan that's unique to them. They may also have systems and processes of how they onboard and train and develop leaders. Now, having a structured program of developing your team is rare when it comes to roofers. Now, I'm not saying they're all bad. I'm not saying that at all. So don't misread what I just said. It's if there's a system and process in place, and a lot of people don't have a system for sales, they don't have a system for installation. They may have something that, I just turn it over to Jim and Jim takes care of it, right? That's not a system or a process. So in the service business, where from a consumer standpoint, that you all on paper look very much alike, when it comes time to sell, showing and proving that you are different, and here's ways that we're different. This is all below the surface stuff, right? But when it comes to being able to sell and look attractive to a buyer to get a higher multiple, then separating yourself from that monopoly to create something that's unique.
Yeah. A key phrase I like to do these, what I call food for thought, and I give these little bullet point things. And I really kind of learned this from John Maxwell 30 plus years ago, because he speaks in bullet point and he gives you little catchphrases, make you go think. And so I adapted that kind of, and I always just use the phrase uniqueness wins. Uniqueness wins. And be the market disruptor. If you're the roofer in your example, how do you disrupt your market space? There's 100 roofers. How do you become the standout roofer? How do you become the standout pool builder? How do you become the standout, you name it? Uniqueness wins. And people emotionally attached to whatever your offering is, that's juice. You got to find a way to actually give that. Be unique, authentically you, but be unique. That's really, there's some magic in that.
Yeah. And onboarding a client is a good way to start. How a client is or a customer, I guess, from whether you're building pools or putting on roofs, that onboarding process and the whole, because in a roof, most of the time you're dealing with insurance. Well, I guess I don't know anymore, but used to, insurance is involved. And having a process and making sure that your customers understand that there is a system, there is a process, they're going to appreciate that. And that's value. You can sell that.
Yeah, that's something that you can sell all day long and not even have to work that hard to sell it.
Yeah.
Especially roofing. Good Lord.
Probably, if they're looking at your business to buy, or you're looking to sell, they probably already know that. That is something that becomes very obvious to everybody.
Yeah.
Most people don't have it.
Yeah. Wow. That's some good stuff right there, guys. Owner independence directly increasing the valuation. These owners, these listeners right now, they got to know if they got a business that can function without them, they actually have a business. Let's talk about that just for a second. How does that increase value of a business that you're trying to exit? And you have this owner independence. So their business can function without these guys. How does that increase, or what does that do for that value?
That increases the value every single time. The two biggest deal killers that I see, and this is not just an Alan Bennett thing. This is the U.S. Census Bureau. There's labor statistics on selling businesses. 83% of small businesses never sell. So that means 17% of small businesses sell. Others close. Now, they may liquidate assets. It's not saying they're not going to get something, but most businesses, and the last statistic was 83% do not sell. So a lot of people, just because you're making money, doesn't mean you're going to be able to sell it. I had a client 2 years ago. The guy was making $260,000 or something. He had the last 3 years, he was making right at $250,000 a year. Could not sell his business because he was the business. The business had his name, and there's nothing against a business having, Alan Bennett, roofing or whatever it is. There's nothing wrong with that. But it was in name, and he wore it like a badge. Everything goes through me. I own everything. And he didn't anybody. I don't want to get back into trust, but nobody wanted all the contracts that he had. It was him. It wasn't the business didn't have the contract. He had the contract. He was very well connected politically. He could not sell that business.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the thing about owner independence or owner dependence is there are two things kill a business or kill a deal. Time obviously kills a deal. And the way time usually ends up killing a deal is because they're starting to figure out that the business is owner dependent and profits. So if you don't have profits and you are the business, I would seriously take a hard look at things other than your business, because chances are they've got a lot of their own assets built up in it. Most small business owners, most of their assets are in that business and not in the stock market. And you're tough time selling that business.
Yeah. Wow, that last investment might be that new shotgun that you need to go do that hunting and hang the hat up and start bringing home some duck for dinner, because that's about all you're going to end up with. Make your business independent. It's got to function without you. If you go on a hiatus, that business has got to be productive.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some work behind that. It's not terrible, but it's not easy. It's like going to the gym. You can't go to the gym and the trainer lift all the weights for you.
Yeah.
Work that goes into it.
Put in the work. That hunting thing it's going to be in my mind. I'm going to be using that story quite a bit. If you haven't picked up on that, that's going to be my new line. I'm telling everybody what I know. I'm like, man, you either figure it out or you're going hunting. It's like Yellowstone, taking them to the train station. There's only one end to that deal. All right, we got to wrap this up, but I got to ask this question, man. This is kind of the hanger here, but measuring stakes at 2 a.m. Measuring stakes at 2 a.m. How'd that shape your leadership?
Yeah, that was the story I told earlier about going in after hours. I was caught at 2 a.m. on security cameras, and one of my guys saw it. I was going in there. I had a meat market, and I want my steaks cut 1.25 inches. That they don't go out of here any less unless somebody specifically orders it cut a certain way. But the ones that went in the meat counter, to me, I am a very passionate, quality-focused business owner, right? And it's got to be a certain way. This is why I started the business, right? 1.25 inch steaks. That is the perfect size for grilling. And I had a couple of new meat cutters back there, and just by looking at them, I knew they weren't 1.25 inches. They were closer to 1 inch. And I've harped on it, and I was like, I got to go back in there and make sure it's right. And I would go in there literally with a tape measure and measure those steaks. And when they caught me doing it, I did it for a long time. But when I got caught doing it, that's when my team lost trust in me. And when I realized they had lost trust in me, I didn't think it worked that way. It was all about me, whether I trusted them. And that's the only way I looked at it as a business owner. But when you lose their trust in you, man, I went from working 70, 80 hours a week to 100. And it just about, it just about killed my marriage. It just about killed my business. I was up a creek without a paddle. It was a terrible situation, and I was trapped. And it took a long time. That 30 seconds that they saw on video, it took me literally years to get out of that trap. And it'll kill your business value.
Yeah.
Know it until after.
For a business.
Yeah.
For the business owners tuning into this, I think they can take away, because I think business owners tend to have, let's loosely call this OCD or perfectionism. But we know perfectionism serves one person, and it has the potential to destroy masses. It literally can destroy marriages. It can destroy teams. It can destroy businesses. So make sure there's a discipline around perfectionism or OCD, call it what you will. But don't let it destroy people. Don't let it destroy trust. Don't let it do any of those things. Make sure you manage that demand. Measuring steaks at 2 a.m., there was a hypercorrection and took a little while to help other people heal. You ended up hunting for a while. Make sure that perfectionism is in check, and make sure that it is. You got to make sure it's not discovered, because perfectionism serves one person, and it's the person in the mirror. That's the only person that helps. Guys, thank you for tuning in today. Jim Robinson with Alan Bennett today on Visionary Leader. A lot of value bombs. You're going to want to go back and listen to this episode. Alan Bennett, he's going to help you exit a business. He's going to teach you some cool stuff. You're going to learn to not be an idiot. You're going to learn to be excellent at what you do. And not only will you exit, you will be able to do your hunting, your exit strategy, and you'll have a pocket full of dough to be able to do that. Thanks for tuning in. Jim Robinson, Visionary Leader.